The Galactic Fleet arrived and humans just grinned. Part 1. The darkness of space around Earth suddenly became crowded. Where moments before there had been only stars and the gentle glow of satellites, now there were ships, thousands of them. Each vessel was the size of a city block, their hulls gleaming with strange metals that seemed to bend light around them. They appeared without warning, materializing like ghosts, becoming solid. Admiral Zexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sword of Dominion. His 4 eyes studied the blue and green world that hung before them like a jewel. He had done this dance 100 times before. Every species followed the same pattern when the HFY hegemony arrived. First came the panic, then the desperate attempts at communication. Finally, the begging. Communications Officer Veltar, open all channels to the planet, he commanded. His voice carried the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems. Let them see us. Let them know their time as a free species has ended. Veltar's tentacles danced across his control panel. All frequencies open, Admiral. Their primitive radio and visual networks are now under our control. Zexthul smiled, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth. This was always his favorite moment. The sudden silence when a species realized they were no longer alone in the universe, and that their visitors had not come in peace. But something was wrong. Instead of screaming or running, the humans were doing something unexpected. They were pointing at the sky and laughing. Not the nervous laughter of fear, but genuine amusement, as if someone had just told them a wonderful joke. Veltar, are you certain the transmission is working? Zexthul asked, his confidence wavering slightly. Yes, Admiral. They can see us, clearly. Look at their news broadcasts. The main screen flickered to show feeds from across the human world. In one city, people had gathered in the streets, pointing at the sky with excitement. Children were jumping up and down, clapping their hands. In another location, someone had set up what appeared to be a party, complete with colorful decorations and food. Perhaps they do not understand, suggested Commander Klixra from her position at the tactical station. Some species are slow to grasp the reality of their situation. Zexthul nodded slowly. That had to be it. These humans were clearly too primitive to understand what was happening. Their technology was laughably basic. Their military forces were scattered across their single planet, fighting each other instead of uniting against real threats. They probably thought this was some kind of entertainment. Send them a message, he ordered. Make it simple enough for their limited minds to understand. The transmission beam focused on the largest population centers of Earth. Zexthul's image appeared on every screen, his voice speaking in perfectly translated human languages. People of Earth, he began, his tone carrying the weight of absolute authority. I am Admiral Zexthul of the HFY hegemony. Your world now belongs to us. Prepare for... He was interrupted by an incoming transmission from the planet below. The signal was surprisingly strong and clear for such primitive technology. A human face appeared on his screen, and Zexthul was taken aback by what he saw. The human was smiling. It was a middle-aged male with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes. He wore simple clothing and had the relaxed posture of someone, completely at ease. Behind him, other humans could be seen going about their daily activities as if nothing unusual was happening. Hello there, the human said cheerfully. Welcome to Earth. I'm Bob Martinez, and I'll be your contact person today. We've been expecting you folks for quite a while now. Can I just say, those are some really impressive ships you've got there. Very shiny. Did you need directions to anything? Maybe the nearest gas station? Space travel must use a lot of fuel. Zexthul stared at the screen in disbelief. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever responded to his arrival with such casual friendliness. Where was the fear? Where was the desperate pleading for mercy? You misunderstand your situation, human, Zexthul said, trying to regain his composure. We are not here as guests. We are here as conquerors. Your species will submit to hegemony rule or face destruction. Bob's smile grew wider. Oh, we understand perfectly, Admiral. Really, we do. And can I just say, we appreciate you taking the time to stop by. It gets pretty lonely out here with just us humans. We've been wondering when you'd show up. When we would show up, Zexthul repeated, confused. Well, sure, Bob said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. We've been watching the sky for decades, waiting for visitors. Made a whole bunch of movies about it, actually. Some where the aliens are friendly, some where they're not so much. We're hoping you folks fall into the first category, but we're prepared for either way. Commander Klixra leaned over to whisper in Zexthul's ear. Admiral, our sensors are detecting unusual energy signatures from their planet. Their technology readings are inconsistent with our intelligence reports. Zexthul waved her away, focusing on the strange human on his screen. You speak as if you have some choice in this matter. You have seen our fleet. You must realize that resistance is impossible. Bob nodded thoughtfully. Oh, absolutely. Those are some serious ships. Military grade, I'm guessing? We've got some folks down here who would love to get a closer look at the engine systems if you don't mind. Always eager to learn about new technology. You want to examine our ships? Zexthul asked, incredulous. If it's not too much trouble, Bob replied. We're a curious species, love to tinker with things, figure out how they work. It's kind of our thing. But hey, don't worry about it if you're busy with the whole conquest situation. We understand you've got a job to do. The Admiral found himself at a complete loss for words. Every protocol, every strategy the hegemony had developed for first contact situations assumed the target species would react with fear or aggression. None of their plans accounted for a species that seemed genuinely happy to meet them. Sir, Veltar called out. We're receiving thousands of transmissions from the planet. Communication requests, welcome messages, and what appear to be party invitations. Party invitations? Yes, sir. Many human settlements are organizing celebrations to welcome our arrival. They're asking if we have any dietary restrictions or cultural practices they should be aware of for the festivities. Zexthul felt a headache building behind his primary eyes. This was not how conquests were supposed to go. Where was the military response? Where were the desperate attempts to negotiate? Where was the fear that made victory so satisfying? Bob, he said, focusing on the human representative again. You seem to be under the impression that this is some kind of social visit. Allow me to clarify. We are here to claim your world. Your species will become servants of the hegemony. There will be no negotiations. Bob's expression remained unchanged, that same friendly smile never wavering. We hear you, Admiral, loud and clear, and we really do appreciate you being so upfront about your intentions. Honesty is important in any relationship. But here's the thing, we've kind of been preparing for this day for a long time. Got some surprises planned. Surprises? Oh, nothing too fancy, Bob said with a casual wave of his hand. Just some things we've been working on in our spare time. You know how it is. Give humans a problem, and we'll spend years figuring out creative solutions. It's what we do best. Zexthul was beginning to feel deeply uncomfortable. Something about this human's confidence was unsettling. It wasn't the bravado of someone putting on a brave face. It was the calm assurance of someone who knew something important that others did not. Admiral? Commander Clixra said urgently. Long-range sensors are detecting movement in the outer system. Several large objects are changing course toward our position. Reinforcements? Zexthul asked. Unknown, sir. The objects don't match any known ship configurations in our database. Bob was still smiling on the screen. Sounds like the welcoming committee is on its way. This is going to be fun. The Galactic fleet arrived, and humans just grinned. Part 2 Admiral Zexthul had given the humans 48 hours to surrender. It was more time than most species received, but something about their strange reaction had made him cautious. Perhaps they needed extra time to overcome their shock and accept reality. He was beginning to regret that decision. For 2 days straight, the humans had treated the hegemony fleet like some kind of tourist attraction. Families gathered on rooftops with telescopes and cameras. Scientists gave interviews about the exciting opportunity for cultural exchange. Children drew pictures of the alien ships with bright crayons and held them up to the sky. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to be having fun. Status report, Zexthul demanded as he entered the command center. His sleep had been restless, filled with dreams of human laughter echoing through space. Sir, Communications Officer Veltar reported, we've received over 10 million messages from the planet. Welcome greetings, scientific questions, recipe exchanges, and approximately 3,000 marriage proposals. Marriage proposals? Apparently some humans find our species attractive. There's quite a debate happening on there. Information networks about whether interspecies relationships are practical. Zexthul rubbed his temples with 2 of his 4 hands. What about their military? Surely they've mobilized some kind of defense. Commander Clixra looked up from her tactical display. That's what's strange, Admiral. Their military forces are active, but they're not taking defensive positions. They appear to be preparing for a celebration. A celebration? Yes, sir. Large-scale cooking operations, decoration installations, and what our analysts believe to be party planning committees. They've even cleared several large fields and set up what appear to be festival grounds. Zexthul stared at the tactical display showing Earth's surface. Red dots marked human military installations, But instead of the expected defensive patterns, they showed something that looked more like event planning. Perhaps, suggested Science Officer Thexmole. They're planning some kind of ritual suicide celebration. Some species prefer to end their existence on their own terms rather than face conquest. No, Zexthul said slowly. I don't think that's it. There's something else happening here, something we're not seeing. The communication panel chimed with an incoming transmission. Bob Martinez appeared on the screen again, this time standing in what looked like a massive outdoor kitchen. Behind him, hundreds of humans were busy preparing enormous quantities of food. Admiral Zexthul, Bob called out cheerfully. Hope you're doing well up there. We're just finishing up preparations down here. Got to say, feeding a few thousand hungry space travelers is quite the logistical challenge, but we think we've got it covered. Human, Zexthul said, his patience wearing thin. Your 48 hours are nearly up. Have you prepared your surrender? Bob tilted his head thoughtfully. Well, that's an interesting question. See, we've been talking it over, and we've decided we'd rather not surrender just yet. Nothing personal, you understand. It's just that we've got this thing about freedom and self-determination. Bit of a hang-up of ours. Then you choose destruction. Oh, I wouldn't go that far, Bob replied, still smiling. We prefer to think of it as choosing option 3. There is no option 3. Sure there is. There's always an option 3. Sometimes you've just got to be creative about finding it. Bob gestured to someone off-screen. Could you bring that over here? Thanks. A young woman approached, carrying what appeared to be a small device. It was clearly human technology, but something about its design made Zexthul uncomfortable. The lines were too clean, the materials too advanced for what should have been primitive engineering. This is Sarah, Bob said, putting his arm around the woman's shoulders. She's one of our engineers. Been working on this little project for about 15 years now. Want to show them what it does, Sarah? Sarah pressed a button on the device. Instantly, every screen on the Hegemony flagship went completely black. Emergency lighting kicked in as backup systems struggled to compensate for the total failure of their primary computers. Sorry about that, Bob's voice continued, somehow still coming through their communications system, even though it should have been impossible. Sarah's device is just a small-scale demonstration. Think of it as a preview of coming attractions. The screens flickered back to life, showing Bob's grinning face once again. Around the command center, Hegemony officers frantically checked their instruments, trying to understand what had just happened. How? Zexthul whispered. Oh, that's easy, Bob said. We've had a long time to prepare. See, the thing about humans is that we're really good at learning from our mistakes, and one of the biggest mistakes a species can make is being unprepared when the neighbors come calling. Our intelligence reports indicated your technology was centuries behind ours. Bob laughed, a sound that was becoming increasingly unsettling to Zexthul. Your intelligence reports saw exactly what we wanted them to see. You know what the best camouflage is, Admiral? Looking harmless, looking primitive, looking like you're not worth worrying about. That's impossible. We've been monitoring your communications for decades. Sure you have. And what did you see? Television shows about alien invasions, movies where spaceships attack Earth, books about interstellar war. Did you think all of that was just entertainment? Zexthul felt a chill run down his spine. You mean, we've been studying you, Admiral, learning your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. Every science fiction story, every alien invasion movie, every fictional technology was actually intelligence preparation. We've been turning our entire culture into one massive military training program. On the screen behind Bob, Zexthul could see humans continuing their preparations. But now he was beginning to understand what he was really looking at. Those weren't party decorations. They were some kind of technological installations. The cooking preparations weren't for a celebration. They were logistics for a military operation. We've been waiting for you, Bob continued, not just hoping you'd show up, but actively expecting it. We've had contingency plans for this scenario for over 200 years, updated them every few decades as our technology improved. Your technology, Zexthul repeated slowly. Oh yes. See, we might look primitive from the outside, but appearances can be deceiving. We've been very busy down here. Made some friends, learned some new tricks, developed some interesting capabilities. Sarah held up another device, this one larger and more complex. This one's my personal favorite, she said, speaking for the first time. It's what we call a reality adjuster. Took me 10 years to figure out how to make it work properly. A reality adjuster? Changes the fundamental physics in a localized area, Bob explained casually. Makes energy weapons not work so well. Causes gravity to do funny things. Generally makes life difficult for anyone trying to cause trouble. Zexthul stared at the device in horror. Technology that could alter physical laws was theoretical even for the hegemony. It shouldn't be possible for a primitive species to develop such capabilities. But don't worry, Bob said, his smile becoming somehow more ominous. We're not unreasonable people. We're willing to negotiate. Negotiate? Sure. Here's our counteroffer to your surrender demand. You and your fleet can leave our solar system peacefully and we'll pretend this whole thing never happened. We'll even pack you some sandwiches for the road. And if we refuse? Bob's smile never wavered, but something in his eyes changed, something that made Zexthul remember that humans were descended from predators. Well, Bob said softly, then we'll have to show you why we've been grinning this whole time. And Admiral, trust me when I say you really don't want to see that. Demonstration. The transmission ended, leaving the Hegemony Command Center in silence. Zexthul stared at the empty screen, trying to process what he had just heard. Admiral, Veltar said quietly, should we prepare for departure? Zexthul looked around at his officers. For the first time in his military career, he wasn't sure what the right decision was. These humans had just casually demonstrated technology that shouldn't exist, revealed intelligence capabilities that had completely fooled the hegemony, and made threats with the confidence of a species that knew exactly what it was doing. Sir? Commander Klixra prompted. No, Zexthul said finally. We are the Kethvar hegemony. We do not retreat from primitive species no matter what tricks they think they have. But even as he said the words, he couldn't shake the image of Bob's smile or the terrible certainty that the humans were looking forward to what came next. The Galactic Fleet arrived, and humans just grinned, Part 3 Admiral. Zexthul had reached his limit with human games. 3 days of strange behavior and impossible technology demonstrations had tested his patience beyond its breaking point. It was time to remind these creatures exactly who they were dealing with. Target the military installation designated Alpha 7, he commanded. Full-power demonstration strike. I want these humans to see what happens when they play games with the hegemony. Commander Klixra hesitated at her tactical station. Sir, are you certain? Our intelligence suggests that facility may have some kind of defensive capabilities. I'm tired of suggestions and maybes, Zexthul snapped. They're humans. Primitive, isolated, technologically inferior humans. Whatever tricks they think they have, they cannot stand against the concentrated firepower of a hegemony dreadnought. The target was a remote military base in what the humans called Montana. It sat in the middle of empty grassland, far from any civilian populations. Perfect for a demonstration that would be clearly visible but wouldn't cause unnecessary casualties. Zexthul was a conqueror, not a monster. Charging primary weapon systems, reported Weapons Officer Graktul. Target locked and confirmed. Fire. The Sword of Dominion unleashed a focused beam of pure energy that could have melted a mountain. The Lance of Destruction cut through Earth's atmosphere like a knife through paper, leaving a trail of ionized particles in its wake. The beam struck the human military base with the force of a small nuclear weapon for exactly 0.3 seconds. Then something impossible happened. The energy beam simply stopped, as if it had hit an invisible wall. The weapon discharge scattered harmlessly into the upper atmosphere, creating a spectacular light show, but doing no damage whatsoever. Report, Zexthul barked, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. Sir, Graktul said, his voice uncertain. Our weapon functioned perfectly. Full power discharge properly targeted, but the energy just dissipated. Impossible. Scan the target area. The main screen showed a close-up view of the military base. It was completely undamaged, not even a scorch mark on the ground. As they watched, humans began emerging from underground bunkers, dusting themselves off casually. Several were pointing up at the hegemony ships and applauding, as if they had just witnessed an entertaining fireworks display. Enhanced scan, Zexthul ordered. I want to know what just happened. Science Officer Thexmal worked frantically at his instruments. Admiral, this is unprecedented. Our sensors show that for a brief moment, the entire facility existed in a state of dimensional flux. It appears to have shifted into a parallel space during the attack, then returned to normal reality afterward. That's impossible. Yes, sir, it should be. But the energy signatures are unmistakable. Someone down there has technology that can manipulate dimensional barriers. The communication panel chimed. Bob Martinez appeared on screen again, this time standing, in what was clearly the command center of the military base they had just failed to destroy. He was wearing a hard hat and safety goggles, looking like a construction worker who had just finished a routine job. Well, that was exciting, Bob said cheerfully. Thanks for the light show, Admiral. Very impressive. Our instruments recorded some fascinating energy patterns. Mind if we ask what kind of weapon system you're using? Our engineers are always curious about new technology. Zex Thul found himself speechless. They had just unleashed enough firepower to level a city, and the humans were treating it like a scientific demonstration. How? He finally managed to ask. Oh, the dimensional shift? That's Sarah's work again. Remember her from yesterday? She's been experimenting with what we call borrowed physics for about 15 years now. Turns out there are a lot of interesting places you can hide when you know how to fold space properly. Behind Bob, Zexthul could see human technicians, examining various devices and instruments. They moved with the calm efficiency of people who had done this many times before. Borrowed physics? Zexthul repeated. Sure. See, the thing about humans is that we're really good at taking existing ideas and improving on them. We've had some excellent teachers over the years, very patient folks who didn't mind showing us how certain things work. Teachers? Bob's smile took on a mysterious quality. Oh, didn't we mention? We haven't been alone down here. Had visitors for quite a while now. Friendly sorts, not like you conquest-minded folks. They've been very helpful with our education. Commander, Clixra leaned over to whisper urgently in Zexthul's ear. Sir, our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures throughout their solar system. Whatever they're doing, it's not limited to that one facility. Where are these signatures coming from? Everywhere, sir. Their moon is showing power readings that don't match any known technology. Several of their outer planets are displaying unusual electromagnetic patterns, and there's something very large moving beyond the edge of our sensor range. Zexthul felt a growing sense of unease. This was supposed to be a simple conquest. Primitive species, overwhelming firepower, quick surrender. Instead, he found himself facing technology that could casually ignore his best weapons and hints of mysterious allies that the hegemony knew nothing about. Bob, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Who are these teachers you mentioned? Well, that's getting into classified territory, Bob replied. But I can tell you they're very old, very wise, and very particular about who they make friends with. Lucky for us, they like humans. We have this thing in common. We both believe in helping people defend themselves against bullies. You're threatening the Kethvar hegemony? Oh no, not threatening, Bob said, waving his hand dismissively. Just explaining the situation. See, we humans have this rule. Be excellent to each other. And we found that sometimes being excellent to each other means making sure the bullies can't hurt anybody. The tactical display began showing new contacts throughout the Earth system. Ships were appearing, not the crude human vessels they had expected, but sleek advanced craft that moved with impossible grace. The newcomers took up positions around the hegemony fleet with casual precision. Admiral, Veltar reported, his voice tight with worry. We're being surrounded. 20, 30, 50 new contacts. They just appeared out of nowhere. Identification? Unknown. Configuration? Nothing in our database. But, sir, the power readings, they're off the charts. On the screen, Bob was nodding approvingly. Right on time. I was hoping they'd show up for this part. They don't like to miss a good demonstration. Demonstration of what? Human ingenuity, mostly. See, when you've got good friends and plenty of time to prepare, you can come up with some really creative solutions to problems. And Admiral, folks have been a problem for a lot of people for a very long time. Zexthul watched as more ships continued to appear around his fleet. They moved without sound or visible propulsion, sliding through space like living things. Their hulls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making them look like holes cut in the fabric of space itself. Who are they? He whispered. Friends, Bob said simply. Very old friends who've been waiting a long time for someone to stand up to the hegemony. Turns out humans are pretty good at making the right kind of friends. This isn't possible. Our intelligence networks span half the galaxy. We would have known about any alliance between humans and an advanced species. Bob laughed, that same cheerful sound that was becoming increasingly unsettling. Admiral, you've been watching us for decades, and you never figured out that our entertainment industry was actually military preparation. What makes you think your intelligence networks are as good as you believe they are? The truth was beginning to dawn on Zexthul. The humans hadn't been lucky or clever. They had been planning. For years, possibly decades, they had been preparing for this exact scenario. And somehow, they had managed to hide their preparations from the most sophisticated intelligence apparatus in the galaxy. Besides, Bob continued, our friends have been very good at staying hidden when they want to. They've had lots of practice avoiding detection by aggressive species. What do you want? Same thing we wanted 3 days ago. for you to leave our solar system and go find something better to do with your time. The only difference is that now, you know why we were so confident you'd eventually see things our way. Zexthul looked around his command center. His officers were staring at their instruments in disbelief as more and more impossible readings appeared on their screens. The humans had turned what should have been a simple conquest into a nightmare scenario. And if we refuse to leave, Bob's smile never wavered, but his voice took on a tone that made Zexthul's blood run cold. Well, Admiral, then you'll find out exactly what humans can do when we stop being polite. The Galactic fleet arrived, and humans just grinned. Part 4 Admiral Zexthul spent the next 6 hours trying to understand what he was facing. The mysterious ships surrounding his fleet maintained their positions but made no aggressive moves. They simply waited, like predators watching prey that hadn't yet realized it was trapped. His science team worked frantically to analyze the new arrivals, but their instruments provided little useful information. The ships seemed to bend sensor beams around them, making accurate readings impossible. What little data they could gather suggested technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. Sir, Science Officer Thexmol reported, we've managed to intercept some human communications. You need to hear this. The main screen flickered to show what appeared to be an internal human military briefing. A woman in uniform was addressing a room full of officers, her tone casual and professional. Operation Doorbell is proceeding as planned, she was saying. The Kethvar fleet has taken the bait and is maintaining position exactly where we want them. Phase 2 teams are in position. Phase 3 assets have confirmed readiness. We are go for full revelation. Phase 3 assets? One of the officers asked. Our off-world partners have agreed to provide tactical support if needed. They've been very patient with our timeline, but they're as eager as we are to see the hegemony taken down a few pegs. Admiral, Zexthul felt his confidence crumbling. Off-world partners? How long have they been in contact with other species? The briefing continued. Intelligence estimates suggest the hegemony has no idea what they're really facing. Their advanced scouts reported standard primitive civilization markers, fossil fuel use, radio communications, limited space travel. They completely missed our actual infrastructure. What about the demonstration attacks? Another officer inquired. Perfectly contained. The dimensional shift generators worked flawlessly. 0 casualties, 0 actual damage. The Admiral looked appropriately confused. Zexthul realized with growing horror that they were listening to humans discuss him like a laboratory specimen. Every action his fleet had taken, every decision he had made, had apparently been anticipated and planned for. Show them the real data, the briefing officer continued. The screen split to show a comparison between what hegemony intelligence had reported about human technology and what humans actually possessed. The difference was staggering. Where hegemony reports showed primitive rockets and basic electronics, the real human infrastructure included fusion power plants, quantum communication networks, and what appeared to be faster-than-light transportation systems. How is this possible? Commander Clixrow whispered. The answer came from an unexpected source. Bob Martinez appeared on their communication channel again, but this time he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a figure that made every hegemony officer freeze in recognition. It was a void dancer. The being was tall and impossibly thin, with skin that seemed to absorb light and eyes like distant stars. Void dancers were legendary, and ancient species that had vanished from known space millennia ago. The hegemony had built much of their expansion strategy around the assumption that the void dancers were extinct. Admiral Zexthul, Bob said pleasantly. I'd like you to meet Ambassador Kethmiran. She's been our primary liaison for cultural exchange for the past 70 years. The void dancer spoke, her voice carrying harmonics that human throats shouldn't have been able to produce. Greetings, Admiral. We have been watching your species' expansion with great interest. Zexthul found his voice with difficulty. The void dancers are extinct. Our historical records... Your historical records reflect what we wanted you to believe, Kethmiran interrupted smoothly. We found it convenient to let aggressive species think we were no longer a factor in galactic affairs. But why? Because, Bob interjected, sometimes the best way to deal with bullies is to let them get overconfident. The void dancers have been watching species like the hegemony for a very long time, waiting for the right moment to intervene. And humans are that intervention? Kethmiran nodded elegantly. Humans are curious, adaptive, and naturally inclined toward cooperation rather than domination. When we first encountered them, we recognized potential that reminded us of our own species in its younger days. You've been training them, teaching them, Bob corrected. There's a difference. The void dancers don't believe in creating weapons. They believe in helping people develop their own solutions to problems. The screen behind them changed to show a timeline stretching back over 2 centuries. Zexthul watched in growing amazement as the real history of human development unfolded. First contact with the Void Dancers in 1823. Technology transfer beginning in 1847. The gradual development of advanced human civilization hidden beneath a carefully maintained facade of primitive behavior. Your entertainment industry, Zexthul said, understanding beginning to dawn. Was our way of preparing the population for eventual contact with hostile alien species, Bob confirmed. Every movie about alien invasion, every book about interstellar war, every television show about space exploration was actually part of a massive psychological preparation program. We needed humans to be ready, Keth Mirren added. Ready to fight if necessary, but also ready to think creatively about solutions that didn't require violence. You've been manipulating us. We've been giving you exactly what you expected to see, Bob said. Primitive, isolated, defenseless humans. Perfect. Targets for conquest. It never occurred to you to look deeper. Commander Clixra was studying her tactical displays with growing alarm. Sir, our sensors are now detecting massive installations throughout their solar system. Hidden bases, weapon platforms, ships that were somehow invisible to our scans. Stealth. Technology? Zexthul asked. Not stealth, Keth Mirren said. Dimensional displacement. We taught humans how to fold space around their important infrastructure, keeping it hidden in parallel dimensions until needed. Like the military base that survived our attack. Exactly. Every major human facility has been equipped with dimensional shift capability for the past 50 years. Your intelligence networks were observing shadows, while the real civilization developed out of sight. Zexthul felt his world crumbling around him. How many other species know about this? None, Bob said cheerfully. As far as the rest of the galaxy is concerned, humans are still primitive natives who've barely figured out space travel. We've been very careful to maintain that image. Until now. Until now, Bob agreed. See, Admiral, the thing about humans is that we really hate bullies. Always have. And the Kethvar hegemony has been bullying smaller species for way too long. You're declaring war on us? Oh no, Keth Mirren said, her voice carrying an undertone that suggested vast amusement. We are offering you education. Education? Bob's grin became absolutely predatory. See, the hegemony has gotten used to picking on species that can't fight. Back. You've forgotten what it's like to face an opponent that's actually dangerous. We thought it was time for a refresher course. You're just 2 species. The hegemony commands hundreds of worlds. Admiral, Keth Mirren said gently, you still don't understand. The Void Dancers never disappeared. We simply learned to hide better. And we've been teaching other species the same lessons we taught humans. The tactical display suddenly exploded with new contacts. Ships were appearing throughout the solar system. Not just the few dozen that had surrounded the hegemony fleet, but hundreds of them. Thousands. Each one representing technology that the hegemony had never seen before. How many? Zexthul whispered. Everyone you've ever conquered, Bob said simply. Everyone you've ever threatened. Everyone you thought was too weak to fight back. Turns out they were just waiting for the right moment to show you how wrong you were. This is impossible, Admiral, Bob said, his cheerful demeanor never wavering. You're about to learn that humans have a saying. The only impossible thing is the thing you're not creative enough to figure out. And we've had 200 years to get very, very creative. Zexthul stared at the display showing his fleet completely surrounded by impossible numbers of advanced warships. Every assumption the hegemony had made about the galaxy, every strategic calculation they had based their expansion on, had just been revealed as fatally flawed. What do you want? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Bob's smile grew wider. Same thing we've always wanted, Admiral, for you to leave our solar system and find something better to do with your time. And if we refuse? Well, Bob said, glancing at Ambassador Keth Mirren, then you'll discover what happens when humans stop grinning and start showing their teeth. The Galactic fleet arrived, and humans just grinned. Part 5 Admiral Zexthul made his choice out of pride and desperation. 2 centuries of hegemony dominance couldn't end with a retreat from a single primitive world. He ordered the final assault, calling in reinforcements from 3 neighboring systems and preparing to unleash the full might of the Kethvar war machine. He learned too late that pride makes an excellent teacher, but only for those who survived the lesson. The attack began, at dawn Earth time, Every weapon the hegemony possessed opened fire simultaneously: energy cannons, particle beams, kinetic bombardment systems, and exotic matter disruptors. The combined firepower could have sterilized a dozen worlds. It lasted exactly 47 seconds. The first indication something was wrong came when Earth's moon began to move. Not orbit. Move. The entire lunar surface split open like a flower, revealing a massive structure that had been hidden beneath a carefully maintained illusion. The moon had been a weapons platform all along, disguised so perfectly that even close-range scans had detected nothing unusual. "Impossible," Zexthul whispered, watching his instruments register energy readings that defied comprehension. The moon weapon didn't fire conventional projectiles. Instead, it generated what human scientists had termed probability collapse fields, areas of space where the likelihood of enemy weapons functioning correctly dropped to near zero. Hegemony energy beams simply fizzled out. Kinetic projectiles missed targets they should have hit easily. Even the exotic matter disruptors seemed to forget how to disrupt anything. But that was only the beginning. Mars revealed launch bays that had been completely invisible moments before. Thousands of ships emerged, not the crude human vessels the hegemony expected, but sleek craft that moved like living things through space. They accelerated without visible engines, turned without attitude thrusters, and seemed to ignore several fundamental laws of physics. "Sir," Weapons Officer Graktul reported, his voice shaking, "our targeting systems can't lock onto them. They're not just fast, they're existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously." Jupiter's moons had begun moving too, taking up strategic positions around the hegemony fleet with mathematical precision. Each one bristled with weapon systems that human technology should never have been able to create. More disturbing still, the weapons were clearly organic in design, as if the moons themselves had become living creatures designed for war. "Admiral," Science Officer Thexmol called out, "we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. Something is manipulating space-time on a scale I didn't think was possible." The answer came when the Void Dancer ships dropped their concealment. They had been there all along, hidden not by stealth technology, but by existing slightly outside normal space-time. Now they revealed themselves in their full, terrifying glory, vessels the size of asteroids that seemed to be made of crystallized darkness, moving through space like thoughts through a dreaming mind. But even the Void Dancers weren't the most shocking revelation. The real surprise came when stars began moving. "Sensors confirm," Veltar reported in a voice barely above a whisper. "Multiple stellar objects are changing position. That's not possible. Stars don't just move." "Those aren't stars," Bob Martinez said, his voice cutting through their communication. Channel with perfect clarity despite the chaos of battle. "Those are ships. Really, really big ships." The view screen shifted to show what the hegemony had mistaken for distant suns. They were vessels, ancient beyond comprehension, each one larger than a hegemony battle station. As they moved closer, their true nature became apparent. These were the flagships of species the hegemony thought they had conquered generations ago. "The Zephyrians?" Zexthul gasped, recognizing the distinctive crystalline hull patterns. "They were destroyed 50 years ago." "The Zephyrians learned how to fake their own extinction," Bob explained cheerfully. "Turns out, when you're facing a species that specializes in dimensional manipulation, destroyed is a relative concept. They've been rebuilding in parallel space this whole time." More ships appeared, each one representing a species the hegemony believed they had crushed. The Mortaki with their biomechanical horrors, the Feltaran and their reality-warping mathematics, the Kreshava and their weaponized music that could shatter molecular bonds. "How many?" Zexthul asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Everyone," Ambassador Kethamiran said, her voice carrying across all communication channels, simultaneously. "Every species the hegemony has conquered, enslaved, or destroyed. We taught them all the same lessons we taught humanity: how to hide, how to survive, how to prepare. You've been planning this for centuries." "Millennia," she corrected. "The Void Dancers are very patient. We knew that eventually, a species would arise with the perfect combination of creativity, cooperation, and righteous anger needed to unite the galaxy's oppressed peoples. Humans turned out to be exactly what we were waiting for." The tactical display was now completely red with enemy contacts. Tens of thousands of ships surrounded the hegemony fleet, representing technologies from dozens of species that shouldn't have existed anymore. The humans had somehow orchestrated the largest military alliance in galactic history, and they had done it so secretly that the hegemony never suspected a thing. "This is our final offer," Bob said, his cheerful demeanor never wavering even as impossible weapons charged around them. Leave our solar system. Leave all the worlds you've conquered. Dissolve the hegemony and go back to your home planets to think about what you've done wrong. And if we refuse? Then you'll discover what humans mean when we say education through experience, Bob replied. See, Admiral, we've studied your species very carefully. We know exactly how to make sure you never threaten anyone again. The question is whether you want to learn that lesson the easy way or the hard way. Zexthul looked around his command center. His officers were staring at displays that showed their fleet hopelessly outnumbered by forces they didn't understand, wielding technology they couldn't counter. For the first time in hegemony history, they were facing an enemy that was genuinely superior in every measurable way. You could have destroyed us at any time, he realized. Of course, Bob said. But that's not who humans are. We prefer to give people the chance to make better choices. Violence is always available as option, but it's never our first choice. What happens to the hegemony? That depends on you, Ambassador Kethmiran said. Withdraw peacefully, and you'll find that the species you once conquered are willing to help you build a better society. Continue fighting, and you'll learn why predator species throughout the galaxy have learned to fear the sound of human laughter. Zexthul made his decision. Pride had brought him this far, but survival would carry him further. All ships, he transmitted to his fleet, prepare for withdrawal. Smart choice, Bob said, and for the first time since this nightmare began, his smile looked genuinely warm instead of terrifying. Oh, and Admiral, one last thing. Yes? Thanks for stopping by. It's been educational for all of us. And hey, next time you're in the neighborhood, try knocking first. You'll find humans are much more friendly when you don't arrive with conquest fleets. As the hegemony ships began their retreat, Zexthul watched the impossible armada that had defeated him. Humans were moving among the other species' vessels, apparently coordinating repair efforts and resource sharing. Even in victory, they were helping their former enemies. Admiral, Veltar said quietly, there's one more transmission coming in. On screen. Bob Martinez appeared one final time, but now he was standing in what appeared to be a massive command center filled with representatives from dozens of species. Behind him, holographic displays showed peaceful activities throughout the galaxy as former hegemony territories began the process of rebuilding. Just wanted to let you know, Bob said, that the offer for sandwiches still stands. We've got plenty, and after all this excitement, everybody's probably hungry. No hard feelings, Admiral. Sometimes it takes a shock to help people see things differently. As the transmission ended, Zexthul realized that the humans were still grinning. But now he understood why. They hadn't been grinning because they were naive or ignorant. They had been grinning because they knew something the rest of the galaxy was only just beginning to learn. That the age of conquest was over, and the age of cooperation had begun. And that lesson, Zexthul thought as his fleet limped home to a galaxy that would never be the same, was worth grinning about.